It was only in 1987 that the world first formally recognized the AIDS pandemic by marking the very first World AIDS Day. Barely enough time for Asunta Wagura to understand what the disease was about when she contracted it barely a year later in 1988 at only 22.
I actually thought I was doomed and doomed for life.
She would later tell of how this painful and most traumatizing experience would be a blessing in disguise, and how years later, a story she once saw as shameful would continue to encourage hundreds to have their status checked, inspire those who tested positive to accept their status, and foster awareness that would years later see Kenya join the rest of the world in striving towards getting to zero. Zero new HIV infections, zero discrimination, and zero HIV/AIDS-related deaths. The adoption of a healthy diet over and above the use of antiretroviral drugs is what has continued to form part of Asunta Wagura's routine 23 years since she was first diagnosed with the HIV virus. But it barely begins to tell her story. And when I ask what does, she introduces me to two of her 3 children.
Wait.
This is Israel, a bubbly 15-month-old baby who makes it difficult not to fall in love, and Joshua, now 5 years old, and a boy who continues to signify Asunta's bravery and another milestone in the journey that was HIV/AIDS awareness in Kenya. Asunta having publicly decided to have a baby at a time when little was known about mother-child transmission. 5 years later, and Joshua is healthy and happy, and so is Asunta.
My family is my joy, and I derive a lot of gratitude from being a family, having a family of my own. Yeah, the fact that HIV almost robbed me away this.
But Asunta wasn't this brave about a virus she contracted only 4 years after the first HIV virus case was confirmed in Kenya, when having the virus questioned your moral standings and worse, was a clear death card.
I stayed in silence for about 4 years without telling anybody about my HIV status. And I remember the first time I went public, I almost pulled out again. I wanted to go undercover and never talk about my HIV status.
Years since her first public interview with the Standard newspaper, and she has no regrets for sharing her story with a then skeptical society.
It gave me freedom and liberation to be what I want confidently, without apologies, without regret. And I find my life has not been worthless, and I see the effort was worth it, particularly that I used myself as a resource to change the perception that AIDS is equal to death.
Asunta, who has since co-founded an organization, the Kenyan Network of Women with AIDS, back in 1993, says she is glad her story helped encourage Kenyans, and especially women, to open up about their status. Through an organization that only began with 4 members, but that now has over 4,000 membership of women living positively with the HIV virus, and that is helping close to 500,000 people in various parts of the country access medication. Just one of many more milestones she lists in the country's 20-year journey through awareness.
The biggest milestone is making treatment available. People changing perception of people living with HIV as persons who are going to die the next moment, meaning now reduction of stigma.
Asunta is currently in Ethiopia, where she is currently attending talks in line with this year's World AIDS Day, a woman who has since taken the HIV fight beyond borders in the hope that back home her message is being heeded too.
I know the government and the programs and everything is committed to the zero prevention or new infections, but it's up to the person. I would say it's up to me not to get HIV infection. It starts with the personal commitment.
Over 400,000 Kenyans are currently accessing antiretroviral drugs, and many more continue to be infected daily. Asunta's dream, just as the world's, as indicated through this year's theme, getting to zero. Evelyn Wambui for Newsmakers.